Hi, I'm Evan from Mobile HQ and welcome to our first video Humpday helper. Today we'll be soldering a digitizer IC onto the digitizer flex of an iPad mini. It's a relatively simple procedure and should only take a few minutes to do. The few tools that you will need a soldering iron, some flux gel and a pair of tweezers. And some low melt alloy certainly helps. So here we're applying some flux gel, and then we'll add a little bit of low melt alloy. The variety that I prefer to use is Chip Quick, but any low melt alloy would probably work. So what you want to do is heat it up, and as you add the low melt alloy, it will mix with the solder that's already there and soften it. Because it stays hot for longer, it'll make it easier to remove. Across the top I've taped with a piece of polyamide, which will help hold the DIC into position and allow you to lift the flex. So very gently heat it up, make sure the soldering iron isn't too hot or too cold. The temperature I have it set on at the moment is about 275 per my soldering iron, but every soldering iron's different and they're all calibrated differently, so it just depends on your soldering iron. If it looks like it's too hot, or the flex starts melting, it's probably too hot, and back it off a bit or a lot. So just run it up and down, continue to heat. You'll see how the solder is actually molten. Then once it gets hot enough, you should just be able to lift the flex off just like that. And then grab a piece of desoldering braid or solder wick and use that to wick up all the excess solder that's left behind, and any chip quick that's flowed through the original connector. So that's the original connector in view. You notice that all the pins and everything are all still in place, and that's what the chip quick helps to do. With original OEM cables, they won't be silver like mine was. Mine was an aftermarket one. They're different. They look different because the Apple uses solder paste on the actual connectors. So the one that I desoldered was an aftermarket one, and the original ones just have like copper contacts on the reverse side. There is solder in between, but only a very little bit. And my polyamide doesn't look like it's holding very well. But basically just suck up all the excess solder, clean the excess flux down with an isopropyl alcohol white, and then you're right to resolder it all up. And when resoldering it, you'll notice the two squares down the bottom, they're actually locators. So you line those squares up with the clear transparent square on the actual flex side, allow you to maintain and check your alignment with the flex just to make sure it's all good. It's probably a good idea to use a fresh piece of polyamide and stick it across the top, and when you've aligned the flex, stick it down and secure it, and that'll hold it into place while you solder it. Righto, so here we go, all stuck together. The flex is already aligned, and you can see the alignment squares. So add flux. The flux is really the secret. It might look like I'm using a lot of flux gel here, but I'm actually not, because it helps prevent the flex from burning, and it also helps give you a good stick with your solder. The solder I'm using isn't anything special. It's actually even leaded solder. It doesn't have to be unleaded or lead free. Soldering it really is the easiest thing. It's just like icing a cake. You add a little bit of solder to the end of your solder tip, and you can sort of see how much solder I've got there. That's probably too much. Less is more when it comes to this style of soldering. And you can see with the fluxes just facilitating the solder sticking into the correct locations. And I'm not an expert solderer by any stretch of the imagination. Soldering is one of those skills that the more you do it, the better you get. And it's something that we recommend that most technicians at least have a go at. But also the original ICs that come with the original digitizers are actually better quality. Here you can see the locators that are all lined up. Sometimes the locators before it's soldered are actually quite difficult to see that they're in alignment, but once you get it in the right light you can see it. But once it's soldered, it's very obvious. And there we go. One soldered IC. This particular one was just a demonstration, and if it's requested, I'll do another one and actually switch it on and show that it works, but it works. Thank you for watching, and please visit www.mobilehq.com.au.